Hi, it's Andrew from Acuity Auto Redact. Welcome to the Data Protection Weekly podcast, where we wrap up all the biggest issues affecting data protection professionals in the UK each week.
What if I told you that cyber criminals were inside networks today, downloading terabytes of encrypted data they know they can't get access to, and they have no intention of reading it today? Welcome to a cybersecurity themed edition of the Data Protection Weekly podcast. What we're going to look at today is stripping away some of the sci-fi jargon around quantum computers and considering how criminals are preparing for a future where current standards of encryption don't work. Now, for decades, our digital security and the data protection principles we've built on top of them have been built on that padlock in your browser. That little assurance that your data to your bank, to whatever organization you're connected to, your cloud working environment is encrypted with HTTPS encryption based on an asymmetrical encryption method that we can't break into. But a quantum computer might be able to break into it. A quantum computer doesn't work like a normal computer. It uses quantum bits, or qubits as they're called, to calculate an almost unimaginable number of possibilities simultaneously. And while this technology doesn't exist today, we know it's coming, and when large-scale quantum computers come online, they will have the potential to just slice through current encryption standards like a hot knife through butter. And if you think that's a problem for 2040, think again. This week, President Trump signed two major executive orders accelerating the United States transition to Post-Quantum Cryptography, or PQC. The US government's basically drawn a line in the sand, and it said that federal agencies need to secure all of their high-value assets against quantum threats by 2031, while also pouring billions into building a research-grade quantum computer by 2028. Now, you're probably thinking, well, I'm not a big American agency. Why does this affect me? I just work in London or Manchester at the organisation that I work for in the public sector, or a small business or a medium-sized business. But it actually signals this massive shift we need to be aware of in global standards. Under Article 32 of the UK GDPR, our organisations are required to implement appropriate technical and organisational methods to ensure data is secure. And that means being at the front of new developments in technology. Quantum computing is arriving, and the state of the art is moving fast. If the US government is officially acting on the threat of quantum decryption, it's not a science fiction made up possible reality. You can bet coming down the line, the ICO and other regulators that may come about as a result of this transformation will start asking about what your plan is to deal with quantum cryptography. And if you're storing data with a 10-year retention life cycle, but your encryption has a 5-year expiration date against quantum attacks, you potentially have a compliance gap that's going to come up in the future, and that it's worth thinking about now. Post-quantum cryptography exists. We need to look at it, and we need to consider how we adapt to it. So let's get practical. You're not going to build a quantum computer in your garage this weekend, but let's think about how you can prepare your organization for the future, because cyber criminals are changing their vector and are getting encrypted information, are capturing it now in the hope that this technology becomes widely available within the next 10 years or so, and they can decrypt it and start to exploit it. So what can you do when you walk in the office, maybe Monday morning or any day this week? Well, some of it comes down to just making sure you have a good inventory. A lot of the principles are good data protection principles. You can't protect what you don't know you have. Your IT and security teams need a really comprehensive audit of what cryptography is used in your organization. Where is legacy RSA encryption hiding in your network systems, in your storage? You need to map everything that's stored and what encryption's used, because at some point within the next few years, the debate is going to shift to how do you get this data to be a post-quantum cryptographic standard. Now, that will likely mean it will help to have your data in a mainstream cloud working environment. Because if you're using Microsoft SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, similar systems, it's very, very likely that when the pressure comes to make sure that systems can't be decrypted by quantum computers, they're going to be at the forefront of developing the defenses because they're at the forefront of developing quantum technology for computing. So making sure that you're not storing data on legacy systems encrypted with all protocols is going to be really, really important. The second thing I'd start to do is to start drip feeding this into conversations you're having with vendors. So if you're using third-party SaaS tools, get a list, make sure it's audited and up to date, and start asking if they've started considering post-quantum cryptography because the US government is doing so. If they start to think, oh, our customers are asking us about this, we need answers, well, actually, that's good to start the conversation going now so that people are prepared and ready for when the impending regulation and legislation starts to come into force. And the best tech companies in the world are working on those quantum resistant algorithms and are starting to publish them and are starting to show how they'll work. So get your vendors to start talking to them and start the conversations now, because if they know it's important to their customers, they will act on it. And the third one, well, data minimalization is always the ultimate shield. You don't need to worry about data you don't store. So make sure you're not storing data, encrypted or otherwise, that you don't need. Having the minimum amount of data that you need means that you are at the minimum amount of risk. For example, in Acuity Auto Redact, we do not store data that is processed by our system by default. If it's uploaded, it's processed and purged. There are some exceptions where the file's exceptionally large and we need to keep it for a little while to make sure it's processed properly, but we keep data for the minimum amount of time. That's still the best defense. So again, stop hoarding data, stop having data for years and years in the past. If it's old data, there's a risk it could be encrypted with old standards, depending on the system you're using. So, having that point at which you get rid of old data always is going to defend you. And in this case, it's probably going to help you avoid a clangor when some old piece of data that's stored with some legacy encryption method that can be cracked by a quantum computer in seconds ends up getting stolen, or somebody tries to gain access to it and decrypt it. Just doesn't need to exist. You don't need to store things that aren't required. So again, these aren't revolutionary concepts. The sky isn't falling in. It's just about making sure we have a stronger roof for what's coming in the future. And this will be happening over the next few years. So delete the excess data you don't need, audit your cryptography, know what you've got, and start talking about post-quantum cryptography. Because if you can encrypt things in a way that quantum computers can't decrypt, you're ahead of the curve. And again, if you do have data and you're a data protection officer and you need to carry out DSARs on data, make sure you check out Acuity Auto Redact. So you just go to www.acuityautoredact.com. We're offering 200 pages completely free of automated redaction. We can rapidly speed up your DSAR redaction process. So if you're trying to get through lots of DSARs at the minute and are drowning in paperwork, check us out. Our free package can make your life a lot easier. And if you're processing at bulk, we have commercial options available as well. Well, thank you so much for listening. Looking forward to catching up with you next week with more actionable insights in how to keep your data safe. Have a good week and speak to you then.
Data protection.